Hey, and welcome everyone to the SomEThing podcast. I'm Eric Mack. And today, for the first time, we're doing a bit of a crossover installment here, gathering the entire Consensus family to look back on 2025, talk about all things MetaMask, Linea, Consensus, Ethereum, crypto, worldwide coordination of human and synthetic intelligence, all of it, and also a glimpse of what's to come in 2026. So let's get into it. We've got an all-star panel today. Go ahead, producer Joe, and bring them out. We've got Joseph Lubin, co-founder of Ethereum, founder and CEO of Consensus, chairman of SharpLink, also Declan Fox, head of Linea, and my co-host for today, Francesco Andrioli, our director of developer relations. Gentlemen,
excited.
How's it going?
Excited to host this with you, Eric.
Thanks for joining, Francesco, wherever you're calling in from today. One of our most well-traveled folks in the company for sure. So just to kind of like dive right into it for the whole group here, both MetaMask and Linea look quite different today than a year ago. I mean, what do you want to say about getting to this point and what things will look like in another year?
Declan, you want to start?
Yeah, so this was a very big year for Linea. We hit lots of milestones on the tech side. We rolled out Beta V4, where we finally delivered the arithmetization for the zkVM, which was the world's first. It was a huge milestone. Also had the TGE for Linea as well. Again, a huge bit of work that's gone into that. And we're starting to see some real green shoots in terms of the ecosystem pulling together over the last few months since the TGE. I do feel next year, 2026, is going to be an even bigger year for Linea. We've got lots of exciting things planned on the product roadmap as we make our way through the path of progressive decentralization, as we get things cheaper, faster, as we launch new features such as native yield, which is going to be a real first in terms of product features across L2 rollup stack. So really excited for that. And obviously lots more happening on the ecosystem side as the Linea consortium begins to further establish itself amongst different customers across Web3, from enterprises down to builders and applications as well.
So this year, the Ethereum ecosystem celebrated its 10th anniversary, and coincidentally celebrated 10 years of always up, never down uptime since the Genesis block. I think we're at 10 years and 6 months now, somewhere around there, or soon. And not so coincidentally, Consensus also celebrated, Consensus in its different forms over the years celebrated 10 years of always up, sometimes a little bit down uptime. So we certainly experienced a lot of volatility over the years in our ecosystem. If you're operating in a bleeding edge technology ecosystem, you develop a little cruft around the edges. Some technical debt creeps in. People start to feel, hey, it's been a long slog, and so you need constant refreshing. And so for really the last couple of years, Consensus has cleaned up a huge amount of technical debt in MetaMask and in Infura, and we've revitalized leadership of a lot of our projects. The talent density at Consensus has been growing very rapidly in the last year or so. So Consensus is firing on all cylinders. Linea had some significant changes in orientation and leadership, and that's gone incredibly well, in my opinion, for Linea, and can look forward to more progressive decentralization for the Linea ecosystem. We have some ideas of what that will look like in 26, and hoping to share that with you fairly soon. MetaMask is, in my opinion, crushing it in terms of vibe and UI, and we're just executing incredibly well and quickly. We're rolling out major features very regularly, and you can expect that to continue. Infura's doing great. Din is poised to to make a big splash. Decentralized infrastructure network, spawn of Infura, is poised to make a big splash in 26. And all of this is really been supercharged by being out from under the Gensler administration, the Warren Gensler administration, having the gale force winds of the U.S. government at our backs rather than in our faces, the proliferation of stablecoins, the legalization legislation of stablecoins, and hopefully clarity soon. So institutional is coming onto DeFi in a really big way, and Consensus, I think of Consensus as the broadest and deepest blockchain company in the world. Deepest because we start at the base of the Ethereum protocol with Besu and Teku, our Ethereum clients. So big protocols team, and we go up through Infura and DIN and Linea applications and MetaMask and applications and services on MetaMask. And I think that has proved really attractive to lots of major financial infrastructure organizations and financial institutions, banks, exchanges, CSDs, etc. So you can expect that Linea is going to benefit pretty massively from that stuff, and and we're going to evolve some elements to be part of MetaMask in 26 because a lot of organizations are looking for their wallet solution, and a lot of organizations are looking for their corpo chain solution, or their where they're going to settle all their transactions.
Nice. I love this kind of like retro. What is happening? Paradigm shift is happening. And thanks for chiming in, Declan and Joe. By the way, Joe, great title here. Big believer. Love it. Just wanna, and feel free always to chime in, right? We just kind of ask question around. This is more like for Joe. You kind of like mention a bit what is coming on 2026, right? But also, like, we want to mention, your role in the ecosystem, not just in the consensus ecosystem, but also in the Ethereum ecosystem, has kind of like changed a bit, right? From consensus with SharpLink, and kind of like, you're at the front and center in the crypto universe, right? Do you agree that kind of like, this will evolve more and more in 26? What we could expect also by the broader Ethereum ecosystem and all the entire multi-chain ecosystem, right? We're building a product that are cross-chain, especially on the MetaMask side, being kind of like multi-chain, Solana native. We're just coming from Breakpoint. Like, how is 2026 looking? Are you excited? How is the evolution? What is your role evolving into? We're very excited to hear more.
Yeah. So the first instantiation of Consensus formed in 2015, and it was all about just continuing the vision and the mission of the Ethereum project, just trying to figure out what people care about with respect to this new blockchain technology. We didn't have any developer tools. We didn't have any infrastructure. We didn't really have an ecosystem. And so Consensus helped build a lot of that stuff. That company is called Consensus Mesh. And currently, this company, Consensus Software, publishes MetaMask. And because the Ethereum ecosystem has evolved and expanded, and the blockchain ecosystem has evolved and expanded, Consensus is still an Ethereum first company, but we need to be a pan ecosystem company. Can't have a great wallet solution unless you service the universe of tokens and integrate with as many blockchains as are reasonable. And so we do that through Infura, and we do that through DIN. And DIN is a superpower in enabling us now and in the future to have good failover solutions, and also just to invite many, our different partners to serve different blockchains for third parties and for MetaMask. So there was a period where we were really loud about Ethereum. The first bunch of years, then we had to go a little bit quiet because the U.S. administration was attacking us and threatening to sue, etc. But we're back, and we're going to be aggressively talking mostly about Ethereum, and I can do that from the perspective of consensus, from the perspective of SharpLink, from the perspective of Linea, because Linea is 100% Ethereum. I think you can expect that that Linea will continue to progress in that direction, be as close to the Ethereum protocol as possible, and ideally work with the Ethereum Foundation to integrate itself deeply into the Ethereum protocol. So in a sense, it's more of the same, but it's accelerating pretty massively. One other piece, just echoing what I was saying before, institutions are coming in such a big way. They understand that the bulk of stablecoin activities on Ethereum. They understand that the bulk of real-world assets are on Ethereum. They understand that DeFi is dominated by Ethereum, and it's really remarkable. I know. I think Danny Ryan's mentioned this recently. When he's sitting in, and when we are sitting in meetings with institutions, all the big financial infrastructure organizations, what they really appreciate is reliability. So that's our 10-year uptime. They also appreciate decentralization. They very explicitly call out that that sort of credible neutrality, made possible by rigorous decentralization, is something that regulators and financial institutions look to. So they do try to modularize activity in their space, separating different interests so that you can't have collusion vertically or otherwise. And the Ethereum technology really supports that sort of approach. And there is no other blockchain technology. Bitcoin is rigorously decentralized, of course, but you can't build anything on it currently. And all the others, whether they're layer 2s currently or alt layer 1s, they all still look like companies. Ideally, Linea will look very much like a rigorously decentralized protocol as soon as we can make it.
There's been so much going on, like you said, this past year. We've been able to see things kind of like accelerate with the change in the administration, and like things get really pushed out. And especially in the last couple of months with MetaMask, it's been very busy. The app now has perpetual futures, rewards, support for Solana. Monad just announced support for Bitcoin this week. That's coming very soon. Prediction markets are on there. And I'm curious, actually, from your perspective, Francesco, out there, putting together all the builder nights, talking to the developers and all the folks around the world, what's the reaction been to the change in MetaMask in particular over the past several months?
Yeah, I can take that. I mean, it's been extremely positive, right? I think I've been around the community for quite a long time. I think apart being extremely proud of the entire MetaMask team and beyond, right? But I think for years our primary challenge was, and in general in crypto, was access, right? And I think today the challenge is all about coordination, right? Across chain, across assets, integrations, identity, and eventually, obviously, real world use case. So I think the work at the end that we've been doing over the past year has been about building the substrate, right? That make all this coordination invisible to the users. Think about Solana native integration, Monad, Bitcoin support, by the way, has been launched in the last couple of days. So big shout out to the team for pushing that. Perps, you've been seeing this, rewards, prediction markets, and obviously I can't imagine a world without actually off-ramping. So everything MetaMask card related, and it's been launched like quite aggressively. And this is a big shout out to Daniel and the entire team here, because off-ramping is one of the biggest use case around payment and stable. And I think all this has been part of the same direction, right? One trusted interface where user can express intent and the system figures out the rest, right? And I really like what Joe is mentioning about, closing kind of the loop and building a new paradigm shift when everybody can interact on chain and beyond. So I think the reason why we're shipping so much right now is because all these primitives as matures, right? Think about all our discussion about account abstraction, all about permission, about delegation, better key management, and better developer tooling are basically unlocked, and we are basically unlocking the entire kind of like new design space, right? And I think those use cases are being maturing. We've been shipping much more. There is entire changes that are happening, and I'm super excited about what's happening also in 2026, right? And I think we have all those foundation in place. And I feel this is what Joe is mentioning about paradigm shift. I'm also a big believer that things are not linear. It's an exponential change, and I think we are putting just the foundation in the past years, and I think innovation is compounding very quickly. And I don't know if you want to add anything like Joe and Declan on that side, but I think we are in exponential innovation takeover here.
Yeah, so there are a lot of pieces that are going into the acceleration of the paradigm shift. Two major ones are the maturation of the Ethereum technology and ecosystem. So we're just doing incredibly well right now with respect to scalability and affordability. Things are pretty cheap. And the roadmap indicates that scalability at layer 1 and layer 2s is going to shock people by at least a couple orders of magnitude in the not too distant future. Couple that with this massive gold rush that's on in terms of traditional finance moving on to decentralized finance or decentralized finance or decentralized applications, making themselves relevant inside enterprises. We are seeing a lot of banks trying to figure out how they turn themselves into, like, build some neobank-like infrastructure. We're seeing a lot of neobanks look to become crypto neobanks. We're seeing crypto wallets calling themselves neobanks in the context of MetaMask. You can expect that you will own your own full service personal bank, and you'll be able to carry it around in your pocket on your phone or operate it from your laptop. It'll be called MetaMask, and it will be a powerhouse. It'll enable people to have full economic financial agency. Banking is going to be totally transformed over the next 2 or 3 years, I think. We, in the form of Linea, are working to build Swift Ledger. That is going to, what we're building is going to have great impacts on financial institutions, not just because they'll be using the Swift Ledger, but because we'll be able to offer that technology into those organizations for their own corpo chain needs. And as I said before, there'll be MetaMask offerings that we can bring to different kinds of institutions, including financial institutions. And so what that looks like is a huge, like orders of magnitude more transactions that flow through our infrastructure, flow through MetaMask and onto Linea, settle on Ethereum layer 1. We are excited and ramping up massively for this this finally much needed evolution in the nature of banking on this planet.
Yeah, I think I think what's like super interesting is, if you look at the 3 goals from the Ethereum Foundation this year, scale the L1, scale the L2, and improve the user experience. And if you think about it, consensus is like effectively implementing that roadmap at the same time. We've got Bezu and Teku helping to deliver upgrades like Fusaka. We've got the linear ZKVM technology, which is gearing up to be real-time proving to snarkify the layer 1 next year, so we can scale the L1 even further. That linear technology can be used to bring these institutions on chain on layer 2, which expands the total footprint of Ethereum, and then all the stuff that MetaMask is doing amazing jobs at on the user experience side, with passkeys and smart contracts and account abstraction. So it's kind of, you kind of see that that connection still with Ethereum by effectively Consensus as a company is helping to deliver all 3 parts of the Ethereum Foundation's goals this year, which I think is super awesome.
Yeah, one of my highlight was definitely like, around embedded wallets and how people can get access to even, making a payment on extension today, right? The fact that you can do SSO and social logins is also like a great way to onboard more users, right? I think, the way that we're building today, our ecosystem is we are counting on our kind of like crypto Twitter chamber, and we need to actually build for newcomers. And I like what Joe is saying about Powerhouse, and I really like, Declan, what you mentioned about. If I remember correctly, there was in Dev Connect. You spoke about a definition about sovereign era for layer 2s, and I think I was very interested to hear a little bit more. And I think you have, a couple of like minutes to kind of like define a bit what is sovereign era for layer 2s. Why is that so important? But I think a little bit trying to understand what is this about. I think this is definitely like a point of interest around all the entire linear narrative.
Yeah, definitely. So this is an observation I had maybe a month or 2 ago, just before DevConnect. And I feel like we've gone through 3 eras for L2s and rollups. The first was like the infrastructure era. This was just about showing that we could extend Ethereum with this new technology, right? And that was back in 2020, 2021. Then we had the scaling era, right? We proved it could be done, but it was all about being faster and cheaper, more efficient. And I think we're coming to the end of that now. You can see, L2 is almost hitting the point of like, sub-second, sub-cent, high throughput. So we've kind of like reached, we're now able to bring financial institutions on chain because the tech is mature. And I think the next phase is what I'm calling the sovereign era, which is really the evolution of these becoming less like infrastructure and more like sovereign networks, like almost like digital like network states. And the reason for that is it has to be where the economics of the system actually work for its citizens and everyone participating in the network. So basically, when the revenues can exceed the expenditures, you have a system that is actually productive, very much like, an actual state in meat space, like a country which needs to grow productivity year over year to be successful. And so I think what we're seeing now is like the sort of L2 ecosystems that are going to be thriving in 2026 and beyond are the ones that are thinking about this. And again, in the revenue side, there's many different sources of potential revenue for an economy, right? There's obviously transaction fees, but I think transaction fees are coming more and more down. Even as the number of transactions scale, the margins come down. You have other sources of revenue, whether it's applications sharing revenue, whether it's licensing fees, MEV, potentially even assets revenue sharing as well, like stable coins. So I think there's a lot of different ways that L2 ecosystems can try to monetize to kind of grow the overall productivity of the chain. And on the other side as well, it's like managing the expenditures, because if you're doing this, but you're basically expending the currency, so the actual token that underpins everything, then that doesn't lead to good outcomes either. And so I think it's this careful balance. And I think Linear is in a really strong position here because of the way that we design the tokenomics. Of course, there's very little like structural sell pressure in terms of the way that we've made sure that most of it goes to the ecosystem. We have very accountable stewards in the Linear consortium who are overseeing all of this in design. And as well, there's very many different sources of revenue that we can pursue with the Linear network, and also the other potential chains that will be powered by the Linear technology as well. So it's not just a single instance, but it can be a sort of collection of many different instances powered by the same technology. And ultimately, this ecosystem and the linear token holders are very much like citizens within like an actual physical state. And I think that is the direction. I know Joe has lots of interesting thoughts about network states. I'd be curious to get his thoughts, but I think that is generally the direction that these chains are going.
So I actually have a question first. Now that people, communities, organizations, and networks are going to have much greater sovereignty than we've been used to for millennia, we're going to need good forms of privacy and confidentiality if we're going to operate on chain, transact financially, engage in governance and decision making. The Ethereum Foundation is cranking it up with respect to focus on privacy and confidentiality. What's your perspective? What's Linea's perspective?
Yeah.
I'm a sovereign wanting to know. Would be sovereign.
Yeah, so we've been thinking about privacy a lot, and obviously working like with the different teams around the Ethereum ecosystem, including the Ethereum Foundation, on what that means. Because also, as linear technology, we really want to position it as close to Ethereum as possible. So we want to make sure whatever we're doing is compatible with the future direction of the layer one. I think there's obviously different levels of privacy. Like it can mean many different things. And I think the sort of two that we see, there's almost like sort of application layer privacy, which can sit on top of a public permissionless chain like Linear Mainnet is today. And that can come through partnerships. And we've been talking to pretty much every single privacy protocol in the entire space and figuring out not just how that could live on Linear Mainnet, but I think how does it actually get exposed to the user? Because it's not just about having privacy, but how you interact the user experience with that privacy. And so that's something we've been thinking about. And there's some exciting progressions therefore that will take place in 2026. And then you've got the other level of privacy, which is more about like chain-wide privacy. And this is actually more of a requirement for, say, enterprises looking to bring their business on chain, because they actually have different needs around what data needs to be obfuscated. And I can say that the chain level privacy, which we can think of as like a private validium in terms of in the technical architectural terms, has been achieved internally. We have a sort of beta version of that that's ready to go, and that will be coming out in 2026 in production as well. So yeah, different flavors of privacy for different people, but I think privacy is going to have its big year in 2026, so we'll be ready.
Yeah, so I think some of the ways sovereignty in 26 for individuals, it's establishing the root of your identity in the form of a DID, a decentralized identity or identifier. It's using attestations and verifiable claims and credentials to flesh out this constellation of information that constitutes your identity. You can have more than one decentralized identity. Those can be personas, and those things can be linkable if you want to link them in certain situations. Maybe you're trying to get a loan and you want to demonstrate activity that you've done across two different personas. All that should be very private, figurably private, and configurably exposable based on the user's needs. I anticipate that a lot of that infrastructure will sit on Linea, will be exposed through MetaMask. So TBD. I would love to share a timeline on that, but can't do that. We've been working on identity for many years, and it's a very complicated and subtle set of capabilities and issues. So for instance, we can all fire attestations at each other regarding our characteristics, our behavior. The Department of Motor Vehicles can lodge an attestation against our decentralized identity, indicating that we are legal to drive in a certain jurisdiction until a certain date. Friends, Spruce ID is doing some very significant things around DMV work with DIDs. RaryMe and our friends at Aztec have done some really interesting stuff about enabling passports to share information via the chip that's located in some passports, and that information can be accessed and shared under zero knowledge. So this is how people start to get self-sovereign on chain. Consensus will look to at some point declare itself a network state, and the Linea digital real estate, Linea mainnet, will be our capital, the capital of our network state, or the continent of our network state. So all this, I think a lot of organizations are contemplating what their own construct will be on chain, and how they will assert their sovereignty in the decentralized protocol world.
So guys, are we close to operationalizing some of these things? Like some of the things you're talking about, Joe, are like so exciting and so needed. Like this is the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you're mentioning the DMV, and like how much would I love to like be able to replace a trip to,
yeah. So that is
replace a trip to the DMV with MetaMask.
In, I think, one state, maybe 2 or 3 states. It's definitely California. Might be Wyoming and one other. But maybe if there are any show notes, we can give accurate information. So all that stuff is available, and people can establish that for themselves. What we need, and if there are any builders out there that are passionate about flippening social media and social networks, we really need platforms that enable people to build social graphs via claims and attestations and things like that. So the nodes of those social graphs would be DIDs, and you can wire them together in different ways. And if somebody built a platform that enabled people to share content, upload content to different social graphs. So basically, if I'm establishing my own social graph, I'm the root of that thing, and maybe I have a social graph for a specific topic. And maybe Declan writes some posts, and I add that, I share that with all the people that are subscribed to my social graph. And Francesco does some vibe coding, and I add that, some tools, and maybe people give me tips for doing great things on my social graph to make their lives a little bit better. And then I probably share a bunch of those tips with the content and functionality creators that are making my social graph better. Francesco's going to have a much bigger social graph than me. So I'm going to want to, in some cases, link my social graph to Francesco's. If I want to reach a bigger audience on an appropriate topic, I can link that temporarily or permanently. Maybe we go into business together, something like that. So somebody brainstorm and riff on that. My guess is that the Linea Consortium would appreciate seeing something like that built in the Linea context and in the MetaMask context. And we'd love to support some brilliant builders.
It's nice. And I can amplify. I mean, the idea also, like for me, is evolving in not just having the attestation but also like track record of the specific permissions, right? And we see that already kind of evolving. I mean, you mentioned a couple of companies. I'm a big fan around the trust, right? Apart, we have Verax on Linea, so you can actually like specifically build and attest things directly on Linea. But I mean, in the economy of trust now, I mean, you can build stuff specifically with stuff like intuition. There is a lot of interesting company, and I think also the fact that we have ZK proofs getting more and more mainstreams, we also see a bunch of like use case as a consequence, right? ZK passport you mentioned, but also like ZK KYC is a super interesting use case that we could definitely like, and maybe, like thinking around like linear use case. And I think everything around proofs is also a consequence of building like a track record, and knowing, especially now that we are going more and more in the agentic economy, we might also provide services to agents, or agents can provide services specifically to chains directly. And I think that's super exciting.
Yep.
One things that I want to mention, Declan, is kind of like getting back to the network nation parts. But I think like you mentioned a lot around digital cities, right? And I also like, how close we are in actually like building operation around those concepts, right? How practically are we to actually build digital cities in that sense? And I also like how Linea is contributing to that.
Declan, are you frozen?
Someone froze.
He's thinking really hard about that question.
Interesting. But maybe, like trying to understand a bit, right? I think things are evolving. There is much more application. We see even network states coming to life. Like even last week in Abu Dhabi, like there were, I think, 2 different network states being launched. But I feel also somehow, and this is maybe also,
Francesco, what were those?
So Republic, there were 2 republics, 1 hour from London, and then the second was the St. Kittens. They also launched a specific network state. I think they're very focused on like on ecosystem. I wish like we were start seeing actually like generalized cross-chain network states and network cities around that.
Yeah.
But I feel also like right now, I think we're still building a lot of blocks around interoperability, especially on attestation.
Yeah.
When you want to kind of like attest different attestation on different chains and having interoperability between them, I think this is something that we're working hard on making this happen. Oh, Declan, you're back. How is we were saying like you were thinking a lot about the answer, that's why you froze. No, we were speaking about kind of like the launch on different network states, and also like we are keen to understand a little bit around your concept around digital cities, right? Like how close we are around operationalizing digital cities today.
Good question. I think we are at least halfway there, because the key part is just how easy is it to actually spin up a new network. And today that's simpler than ever. You take a linear stack, which is open, so you can spin your own network. You can do that almost as easy as it was to deploy a smart contract, 3 years ago. Now, the hard part is obviously all of the, I think to Joe's point, it's like, how do you manage the different digital identities on the chain, sort of private way that's also interoperable with all the systems that people want to use in their everyday lives? And I think that's the piece that we need to finish. But I think I would say the hard part's done, right? Like the core infrastructure is there. It's now of everyone's like, so yeah, I think operationally I think the social graph is interesting because it starts to get into, fundamental reasons of not just like why people come and actually, like come on chain onto the blockchain, and why they stay there, the retention, like stay there because their friends are there, they can get paid and use their card, and they can pay for things on there. So I think it's like all of those pieces that starts just to move your life like directly on chain that we need to keep working on.
Yeah, we had a pretty exciting conversation on the show about a month back with the guys from Shodai Network and CNS Labs, who I think, Joe, you're familiar with. Yeah. And they're doing some really interesting things. Like it's not exactly DAOs, but it's like, what if we could take the concept of a DAO where you can do what you're talking about, Declan, and kind of live and work in this community of people with similar goals, and without some of the incentives that lead to short-term gain, but like long-term ruin, maybe. So I'm excited to see some of those concepts come around kind of again, now that maybe we're a little bit more mature in that cycle. So lots of exciting stuff there.
That's why we need, not just attestation, but to provide a track record. Yeah, I mean that's kind of the next phase where we need to build, right? Because if we are able to build truly attestation and kind of this economy of trust, we're also able to build truthful incentives, because you're not able to game the system and everything is on chain. So that's why it's super exciting. I think like we are 50 minutes in. Let's kind of like move to our kind of like third segment, and I just want to mention between Dev Connect and Breakpoint and Finance FinTech Week, like we heard more and more layer 2 fragmentation, especially in the Ethereum ecosystem. I just want to ask this question to both Declan and Joe, right? You feel that this landscape is sustainable long term? What does it mean for you? What do you think means kind of like consolidation, and when this will happen? I'm always asking this. It may be a spicy question, but I would love to hear your thought in front of everyone.
Sure. So let me approach it from a high level, and maybe Declan can talk some nuts and bolts. So a long time ago, Ethereum built version 1. We did think of it as a prototype. It turned out to be an incredibly capable prototype, but we knew that it wasn't civilization scale technology. We knew that the internet was infinitely extensible, and we needed to become that, basically. We tried different approaches to scaling, and we just didn't have the technology to get that done early on. And so the Ethereum Foundation and ecosystem threw it out into the open to researchers and entrepreneurs to figure out scaling. Some optimistic approaches were tried in the roll-up centric roadmap approach, and they got to market sooner. Some narrow ZK approaches got to market mostly around just transactions. And we at Consensus had a protocols team and an R&D team inside of protocols, and we recognized early on we were doing some zero knowledge proof infrastructure work, and we recognized that not only would it be really important as a layer 2 rollup technology, but it would probably be really important as a horizontal communication technology, and we were pretty certain that it would make its way down into layer 1, into the core protocol. And we were surprised at how quickly zero knowledge proof technology evolved. And after a few years of research, the team came to us and said, hey, we think we can build a roll-up on this technology. And turns out that we could, and we did, and it is maybe by an order of magnitude the most performant layer 2 technology in the ecosystem in the world. So we're incredibly proud of the people that built it and continue to build it. And essentially, we knew in the Ethereum ecosystem that we had to enter this phase of divergence where we explored lots of approaches in order to achieve scalability. We knew that would break composability and bring fragmentation. We knew that it would lower the pricing power of layer 1, and we didn't really anticipate that it might be a challenge for the price of Ether, but we knew that transactions would get very cheap, and that we'd create a wealth of block space. And so we're on track because the internet and the web are absolutely giant, and we anticipate that Ethereum technology will undergird much of the web going forward. I call it the natural evolution of the internet, Web 1 and Web 2 protocols, and you can call it Web 3. And now we're in this period where we're exploring lots of ways to bring things together. I think of it as a convergence phase where we can bring composability back, where we can have uniform interfaces, across lots of chains where you don't even think about what chain you're on, or you don't even think about where this token is that you're using. And so application builders in the not too distant future are probably going to use SDKs, rely on wallets potentially to make the fact that you're on different chains simultaneously invisible. So that's going to work very well for Linea. Linea's going to the Linea technology will be used by lots of different Linea networks. Some of them corporates, banks, major financial infrastructure, and I do believe that the Linea technology has a chance of being the first to be enshrined in the Ethereum protocol, and so it's intent-centric architecture and so many other things. AIs can even help us eliminate the need to be aware of different networks that are underlying things. So it's sort of similar to to the early days where there were lots of walled gardens on the internet, and nobody really pays attention to what routers and different kinds of network infrastructure we all use. And so in the next small number of years, we're probably going to get to a blockchain-based web that appears sort of opaque and seamless to applications. And so that's one reason why we at Consensus like to integrate different projects into MetaMask, because I kind of think they're all gonna have to be significantly attached to or running on Ethereum at some point, because the economics are really, really hard. If you're a network like Solana, your inflation is incredibly high compared to, I think Ethereum's inflation is way sub 1%. I think Solana's is maybe around 8%, something like that. And ultimately, alt layer 2s are going to have a tough time competing if their inflation runs so high, or their cost to secure themselves runs so high.
Yeah, that almost like comes back to this like sovereign era idea, because yeah, if you look at the economics of a layer 2, because obviously it pays Ethereum for the service of its security, which then Ethereum handles through its inflation. But if you were to go and launch a new layer 1, you have to pay those validators and an order of millions of dollars, and so the economics look really bad. Again, if you go and look on, let's say, DeFi Llama, I think most layer 1s today make less than $100 within 24 hours, and they pay millions of dollars to validators. Ethereum's the only network that has that scale and network effects where it can afford to do that sustainably, and then L2s get to have this amazing sort of synergistic trade-off by having really favorable economics. So it's a really, I think that's why we're seeing lots of these financial institutions choose layer 2 rather than choosing to launch their own layer 1 from scratch. So I think just to kind of touch on the fragmentation piece, it kind of reminds me of that meme with the Grim Reaper, on each door, like going to each door and kind of like slaying it down. And first it was all about scalability and user experience, and then we added, we had layer 2s, and then we added smart accounts and passkeys, and then it's fragmentation, and that's just going to be knocked aside as well. And again, like a year's time, I think with the direction of the technology, Linea's sort of prime, built to essentially be, when we first set out to build Linea, we actually were already thinking about this future years ago. Like, how do we see it being used again on the layer 1? And now we have a name for that. We call it native rollups, and there's an actual EIP now available for this concept. But Linea is in a really strong position technically to be a native rollup, where the Ethereum sort of L1 itself handles the execution of the L2. So this is coming, and it's going to maybe sort of end of 2026 is too ambitious. It depends, because there'll have to be a hard fork. But I expect at the very least sort of early 2027, we'll see this world of native rollups, and perhaps even sort of base native rollups, depending on some of the issues of base. But as we work through those problems, it all just becomes one big sort of Ethereum layer of execution settlement. And I think fragmentation from a technical perspective will go away. Now, I think from like a business perspective, there's definitely some chains, L2s, that are going to sort of fade off naturally because some of them are like startups. Not every startup makes it. So I think there will be a natural sort of consolidation and the long tail sort of slowly fading away over time, which is totally normal as we experiment in a new world. And there's many different businesses. The same happened for smart contract applications. But yeah, I think at least the technology makes it easy to try these experiments and to do it in a way where you as a developer know that if you do get that viral success, you're not going to be constrained because you hit 100 TPS and now you have to explore new technological solutions. It's not even in your thought process, right? You just focus on getting product market fit, and the technology is not going to stop you from doing that. So I think that's coming probably in 2026, if not at the latest 2027.
We just got a couple of minutes left here, and I want to know from all three of you, actually, like in addition to everything we've talked about, privacy, this new sovereign era, digital identities, tons of like exciting stuff coming. What else are you excited for in 2026? And it doesn't necessarily have to be something that we're working on here on Consensus. Could be anything happening in terms of the world, the economy, or where crypto are headed.
I guess very simply, our ecosystem is going mainstream in an incredibly big way. I think it's going to be breathtaking. So we're seeing major financial infrastructure adopting Ethereum technology, namely Linea technology. We're seeing, and that's the payment rails essentially, and we'll see a lot of settlement on blockchains, and the security side of that. So the Swift protocol, I think it's under 50% of Swift messages are about just moving money, and I think that maybe a little more than 50% is about securities and money moving. And so we're seeing a huge amount of activity in the DTCC in the US, in Clearstream and Euroclear in Europe. These are centralized securities depositories. They're the entities that sort of own all the securities and help clear and settle all that stuff. And they use Swift messaging, and they use Ethereum technology. So DTCC's been mostly using the Besu technology. That's the technology that Lesu that Linea is based on. I guess we could call it Lesu.
Linea Besu.
And in other organizations like NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange, et cetera, are figuring out how to, working with the SEC, working with DTCC, figuring out how to create equities tokenized natively. And again, it's looking like the bulk of that activity will be on Ethereum technology. So it's on. Fasten your seatbelts. It's maybe get some rest over the next week or two, because it's going to be an insane year.
How about you guys, Declan, Francesco?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Joe. I think for 2026, like the things we're talking about, they're not small things. Sometimes we talk about them very blasé or like brush them off, like, yeah, we're just upgrading the plumbing or the financial infrastructure system that's gone on for decades. That's not a small thing, and it's happening, and it's from the technology that we've been working on. And I think every now and then you have to kind of step back and realize the enormity of like the task that we're actually taking on there. I think 2026, the rest of the world is going to stand up and realize that as well. And I think that's what's going to be really special. And I think we're going to see this, to kind of maybe Francesco's point, it's like exponential growth. It's already happened. If you look at the data, especially, I think obviously with things like stable coins, but other areas as well, you're starting to see that exponential growth that you see with a lot of technological innovations. And it kind of feels quiet. I think right now people would say, maybe due to the macro or the markets, that it's a little bit quiet and boring. But what's happening behind the scenes in terms of actual real adoption is pretty enormous. And I think 2026 is just going to continue there. It doesn't care as much about the macro markets. It just cares about what is good for business and users. And I think this technology is just a fundamental enabler for giving better experiences to the businesses that run on them, but also the users who interact with this business, and obviously communities as well who want to run on these new network states that we've been creating. So super excited for 2026. It's going to be a big year for Linear, big year for consensus, and for whole of Ethereum and crypto.
And every day, just FYI, we're hitting kind of all-time high on stablecoin transaction volumes. Is quite crazy to see exactly exponential growth. And yeah, I'm super bullish on those innovation, right? I feel super quickly. I feel like we're also moving from this action-based flow to intent-based flow. So, you know, like we are kind of like building experiences on top. And you know, everything is kind of configurable. I think for MetaMask specific, like those are the three things, right? First, safer default through permissions, delegation, and better account models. On the second, account abstraction specifically, right, and chain abstraction, right? So not adding just kind of like Solana natively, new layer 2s and layer 1s, but eventually Bitcoin, but also like the way that you interact as a users, right? So abstracting the way, one example, you know, like getting, you know, bridge and swap together, right? Like those specific kind of like things are extremely important. And then everything around kind of like, you know, onboarding need to feel familiar, right? Need to kind of like have somehow some kind of a familiarity around recovery, around payments, and on ramping. I'm extremely bullish around MetaMask cards, everything on ramping, and I feel like, you know, expanding almost every month in new countries. It's extremely interesting because we are really getting crypto and blockchain infrastructure accessible to everyone. So I'm excited. It's not just about crypto UX. But everything is a good sign. So and the fact that we are here in this live stream end of the year, kind of like, you know, saying, you know, those are the big wins and we're looking forward to what's coming next, is not just a roller coaster. We are really excited what's coming. So thanks so much for everyone here listening that is part of this journey and part of our journey.
Awesome.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for taking the time. I also look forward to MetaMask and a couple of attestations replacing my next trip to the DMV. Thank you for that. Let's get to work on that. Everyone, stay tuned to this channel for tomorrow. We're going to do another one of these live streams. We're going to be talking to one of the most successful, I think maybe the most successful trader on Poly Market. We're going to have a lot of really interesting tips there. And by the way, check MetaMask. You'll find some prediction markets in there now as well. So much going on chain and online. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Declan. Thank you, Francesco. Thank you,
Thanks,
producer
Eric.
Joe.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Season's greetings. Get some rest. You're going to need it.
Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers, mate.